Have you ever wondered why some people find such joy in giving, while others clutch tightly to every dollar? What if I told you that generosity isn't just about having more to give? It's about uncovering a deeper purpose for your finances that transforms both you and the lives you touch. You see, in my years of studying biblical finance, I've discovered something fascinating. The Bible contains timeless wisdom about generosity that's more relevant today than ever. These aren't just ancient practices, they're proven principles that have guided countless people to experience the true freedom and joy that comes from generous living. Today, I'm going to share 7 biblical principles that will revolutionize your approach to generosity. These aren't just theoretical ideas, they're practical truths that have been tested across thousands of years and countless cultures. Whether you're struggling to make ends meet or managing abundance, these principles will help you discover the secret to living a truly generous life. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Our first principle of generous living is simple but profound. Generosity multiplies. This truth is beautifully illustrated in the life of the widow of Zarephath. During a severe drought, this woman had nothing left but a handful of flour and a little olive oil. Yet when the prophet Elijah asked her to share her last meal, she chose generosity over self-preservation. The result? Her jar of flour was never used up, and her jug of oil never ran dry. 1 Kings 17:7-16. Think about the profound lesson here. When everything in us screams to hold on tightly, God's economy works in reverse. The widow's story teaches us that generosity isn't about abundance, it's about trust. The key isn't the amount you give, it's developing a generous heart. Start where you are. Maybe it's setting aside a small percentage of your income, or perhaps it's giving your time and talents. Remember, generosity isn't about emptying your account. It's about positioning yourself in the flow of God's abundance. One person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. Our second principle reveals a powerful truth. Generosity creates freedom. We see this beautifully demonstrated in the early church in Acts, where believers shared everything they had. All the believers were one in heart and mind. No one claimed that any of their possessions was their own, but they shared everything they had. This radical generosity created an extraordinary result. There were no needy persons among them. The early Christians discovered that when everyone gives freely, everyone's needs are met. They weren't trapped by the fear of scarcity. Instead, they experienced the freedom that comes from open-handed living. The more tightly we grip our resources, the more they tend to control us. But when we live with open hands, ready to give and receive, we experience true financial freedom. It's like breathing. We must exhale generously to make room for the next life-giving breath. A closed fist can neither give nor receive, but open hands can do both. Consider implementing a first-to-give mindset. When you receive income or encounter a need, make giving your first response rather than your last consideration. This shifts our perspective from "how much can I keep?" to "how much can I share?" This mindset transforms not just our finances, but our entire approach to life. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. Our third principle uncovers a surprising truth. Generosity springs from joy. This isn't just about the act of giving, it's about the heart behind it. Think about King David's preparation for building the temple. When he gave his personal treasure for God's house, he declared with joy, "Now, with joy, I have seen your people here, present, giving willingly to you." The fascinating thing about David's example is that he didn't just give, he gave with genuine delight. This wasn't a grudging donation or a calculated investment. It was an overflow of joy that couldn't be contained. When we discover this kind of giving, it transforms from obligation into celebration. True generosity isn't measured by amounts, but by attitude. When we give from joy, we experience what Jesus meant when he said, "It is more blessed to give than to receive." This isn't just a nice saying, it's a principle that can revolutionize our relationship with money. Start viewing generosity as an opportunity rather than an obligation. When a need arises, instead of thinking, "Do I have to give?" ask yourself, "Do I get to give?" This simple shift in perspective can transform giving from a duty into a delight, and God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. Our fourth principle reveals a powerful truth. Generosity flows from abundance thinking. This principle is beautifully illustrated in the story of the feeding of the 5,000. When faced with thousands of hungry people, the disciples saw scarcity, just 5 loaves and 2 fish. But Jesus saw abundance. He took what was available, gave thanks, and demonstrated how God's abundance can flow through our generosity. Mark 6:41-44. This account isn't just about miraculous multiplication, it's about seeing our resources through God's eyes. The disciples saw what they lacked, but Jesus saw what God could provide. When we shift from scarcity thinking to abundance thinking, we begin to see opportunities for generosity everywhere. Notice how Jesus handled the situation. He started with gratitude, trusted in God's provision, and involved others in the distribution. The result wasn't just enough, there were 12 baskets of leftovers. This teaches us that God's provision often exceeds our expectations when we approach giving with faith and gratitude. When we understand that everything we have comes from God's abundant provision, it changes how we view giving. Instead of clutching our resources in fear of not having enough, we can give confidently, knowing that God's supply is limitless. The generous will themselves be blessed, for they share their food with the poor. Our fifth principle unveils an eternal truth. Generosity transforms communities. We see this principle powerfully demonstrated in the life of Boaz, a wealthy landowner who understood that prosperity comes with responsibility. When Ruth came to glean in his fields, Boaz went beyond the basic requirements of the law. He instructed his workers, "Let her gather among the sheaves, and don't reprimand her. Pull out some stalks for her from the bundles and leave them for her to pick up." Ruth 2:15-16. Boaz's example shows us that true generosity isn't just about giving the minimum or following rules. It's about looking for opportunities to bless others abundantly. His generosity didn't just help Ruth, it strengthened the entire community and became part of God's bigger plan for his people. This kind of strategic generosity creates ripple effects that go far beyond the initial gift. When we give thoughtfully and consistently, we help create sustainable change. It's not just about meeting immediate needs, it's about fostering dignity, creating opportunities, and building lasting relationships. Generosity has the power to break down barriers and build bridges between people. When we give with wisdom and compassion, we participate in God's work of restoration and community building. Remember this: whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. Our sixth principle reveals a timeless truth. Generosity is a spiritual investment. This principle is beautifully illustrated in the story of the poor widow who gave her 2 small copper coins at the temple. Jesus pointed her out to his disciples, saying, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in everything, all she had to live on." What's remarkable about this story isn't just the widow's generosity, but Jesus' perspective on giving. He measured her gift not by its monetary value, but by the sacrifice and faith it represented. This teaches us that generous living isn't about the size of our gift. It's about the size of our trust in God. When we approach generosity as a spiritual investment, we begin to see every giving opportunity through eternal eyes. It's not about depleting our resources. It's about investing in God's kingdom. Like planting seeds, each act of generosity has the potential to yield a harvest far beyond our initial investment. This principle challenges us to think beyond immediate returns. When we give generously, we're not just meeting physical needs, we're participating in God's economy, where spiritual dividends often exceed our earthly calculations. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. Our final principle uncovers an essential truth. Generosity extends beyond money. This principle is powerfully demonstrated in the early church through Tabitha, also known as Dorcas. Acts tells us she was always doing good and helping the poor by making robes and other clothing for widows. Her generosity wasn't expressed through financial gifts, but through her time, skills, and dedication. This story reminds us that true generosity encompasses all areas of life. Tabitha used her specific talents in this case, her ability to sow to bless others. Her impact was so significant that when she died, the entire community mourned her loss, and God worked through Peter to bring her back to life. Generous living isn't limited to those with financial abundance. We all have been given unique gifts, talents, time, and resources that can be used to bless others. Sometimes the most impactful giving doesn't involve money at all. It might be sharing your expertise, offering your time, or using your skills to meet others' needs. These 7 principles of generous living reveal that generosity is far more than a financial transaction. It's a lifestyle that transforms both the giver and the receiver. From understanding that generosity multiplies, to recognizing it as a spiritual investment, to realizing it extends beyond money, each principle builds upon the others to create a framework for living that reflects God's heart. When we embrace these principles, we don't just give more, we live more fully. We move from seeing generosity as an obligation to experiencing it as an opportunity for joy, impact, and spiritual growth. As you reflect on these principles, I encourage you to take one specific step toward more generous living this week. It might be financial giving, sharing your time and talents, or simply being more intentional about looking for opportunities to bless others. Share in the comments below which principle resonated most with you and how you plan to put it into practice. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more biblical wisdom on living a life of purpose and impact. Remember, Your journey toward generous living starts with a single step. What will yours be today?